The following is the 9th episode of the Filip The Terran Podcast, where I interviewed William Hill, the CEO and founder of FruPro, someone who's been in the fruit and vegetable industry for many decades, comes from a family that's been dealing with the distribution and management of fruits and vegetables, which make up, as he said in this podcast, around 60% of global calories. So he's someone that's actually helping the whole world eat in a massive way. Like, he's somebody that manages supply chains and understands the whole back end system of how it is that there's food in the supermarkets, how it is that there's food in the shops, how it is that there's food on our plates. And obviously, such an important thing. All of us need to eat. And we spoke a lot about how that supply chain and how that whole industry works, the problems it has. And if you're just patient and you listen to the end and you really pay attention to what William says, as I point out in the podcast, I believe that with FruPro, which is the company that he's working on right now, that you raised funds for, I think twice now already, he said, there's potential in solving world hunger. Right? Really, like, I really think so. You obviously, you make your own opinion, you listen to him, see what he says, but from my understanding from this conversation, I really believe FruPro could solve world hunger. Really, no joke. So let me know what you think about this, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Welcome to the podcast, William.
Thank you.
I will let you do the introduction for yourself. How about you tell us, who you are, what you do, and why you decided to come and speak with me today.
Cool. Thank you very much. Well, Philip, firstly, thank you for inviting me. Pleasure to join the podcast. So my name's Will. I'm the CEO and founder of FruPro, which is will be the world's largest B2B marketplace for fresh produce trading. So fresh produce meaning fruit and vegetables. And it basically is end-to-end supply chain connection. Grower, importer, exporter, wholesaler, multiple retailer, retail, food service, and everything in between. So my background is all fruit and vegetables. I come from a long heritage. I'm actually the 5th generation of family business which still exists today, but that family business is centered purely around wholesale. So my grandfather, great-grandfather, and great-great-grandfather, they owned stalls, shops, and retail pitches across London, northwest London into West London, and then we became purely wholesale centric about 30 years ago. So when I finished my schooling, I went straight into the wholesale market, worked for the family business. And for me, an amazing industry. I love fruit and vegetables, especially fruit, hugely passionate about the product itself. And I was fascinated by the journey of the product. So while I was in the wholesale market, looking around and thinking, how did this amazing product get to us? What's the story here? And I embarked on a bit of an import adventure, which took me through a significant part of my education, I believe, in the fresh produce industry. So started when did I start? I was in the import section for about 6 years, and then in 2016 I founded my own company, WT Hill Imports, which I founded with co-founder and now CEO of that company, Damien Whedon. That's going into year 6. It's a very progressive company, a lot of amazing opportunities there. We have an office in Zaragoza. We had a head office in Tewkesbury near Cheltenham, and an office in Kent. So strategically, very strong positions. And we, like I say, we've done extremely well. But what I wanted to create, the impact I wanted to leave, was not just to, my own heritage, own businesses. I wanted to leave an impact and a tool that the entire industry could use globally. How we could really tackle major issues, issues of bad debt, issues of wastage, issues of people not being aware of the product available to them around them. And also that businesses aren't aware of the opportunity to redistribute, even donate product that, is going in the bin. And while we've got, such a huge wastage problem on one side, we have another problem of hunger, even globally in the UK where I'm based, there are millions of people who are food insecure, which, they don't know where their next meal is coming from. our system, as much as I love our industry to pieces, is very dear to my heart. Our system is clearly broken if we can't strategically and easily manage that volume and put it back into the food chain. So I designed FruPro, and away we went. So FruPro is now, I founded it in 2020, January 2020. Went through a pre-seed round, which was very successful. We're now launched, active users, and we'll be going for our seed round. Yeah, we'll be going for our seed round this year. So it's exciting times. Hopefully we'll start good stuff happen.
It's incredibly impressive. I mean, like anybody who manages to raise funds for a business, that is very hard. Like this is like only a small fraction of businesses that actually get fundraising, and so this is already very impressive. But before we dive into FruPro, which is obviously a very interesting subject, as someone who has so much experience and knowledge of literally how we feed ourselves, fruits and vegetables is a big part of how we feed ourselves today. Like, what percentage is it of calories? Like, if you were to say like fruit and vegetables of the calories of the world, what percentage is fruit and vegetables, roughly, in your opinion?
Well, last time I was chatting to someone about this, it was difficult to. So fresh fruit and vegetables, I mean, you could include frozen, you could include dried. It's
everything.
Globally, well into 60-70% as a guess, I'd imagine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
wow, that's crazy.
Huge amount of product. I mean, fruit and veg.
More than half the people.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, I'd say comfortably, including frozen, including even some sort of processed fruit and vegetables. Every human being in the world would have come in contact with it at some point.
Wow.
And it's massively impactful. It's hugely beneficial health-wise as well. But the impact isn't just for how we eat. The impact is also on how we're farming it, land usage, water usage, all of these things. There are improvements to be made. And I believe technology will allow us to make those improvements. I myself am not technologically minded or from a tech background, but I believe in the power of tech for good. And I think that it's a very useful tool for us to use and use to our advantage. So it's exciting to see what the future holds for that. For
sure. So back in terms of the calories, I think it's a very interesting way to compare. I mean, if it's 50 to 60% of food of calories in the world come from fruit and veg, that's like more than every second person in the world lives off fruit and veg. So this is how important, this industry is. And I think before we dive into, technology and FruPro and how that connects with the supply chain of literally how at least half of humans eat, can you tell us about how that system actually works? If you can give us an understanding, how do, let's say, people in Ireland or England or Spain are able to, have fruits and vegetables from all around the world? How does it work? And how do you even manage this? Like, you guys have been managers for a long time. How does it work?
So supply chain management, great question, to be fair. So if we take the UK and Ireland as an example, it's hugely import-centric nations. We've got especially the UK, massive populations that have a demand and a requirement for good product 12 months of the year. And, what happens is that growers are aware of this opportunity. So you'll grow a product to a specification that fits that marketplace. So for an example, that these varieties of strawberries or bananas or whatever, there's only really one variety of banana produced for consumption now. Cavendish, exactly. Very well done. So, that they know what sizes, they know how ripe it is to come into the country, they know what the consumption looks like, they know what the price point looks like. And it's just about managing that. But, you speak to a grower, we're managing the expected sales of a product in the UK. We're managing what we think the product's going to look like when it arrives to destination, which of course is, it's the most highly perishable product probably in the world, I imagine, fruit and vegetables. It's deteriorating from the point of harvest. And, it's all about getting that product onto the shelf or into the food chain effectively and quickly, so that you're managing the expectation through the supply chain all the way to the consumer. The consumer's getting what they want and they believe they need. and what they demand. And then through that chain, you're communicating the information all the way back up to the grower, who, again, you're managing their expectation as regards to price point, volumes, sales, all that sort of thing. It's like there's quite a lot of brokerage and quite a lot of relationship management that goes into it. But essentially, it's understanding the product and understanding your marketplace, and that's, you marry the two together, you have a fairly successful recipe for supplying a country with a product. And then, of course, you have national production, which is fantastic. Places like Spain have huge production, 12 months of the year, fantastic varieties of products, because of the climate, because of growing techniques, and they obviously supply their home markets really, really, really well. And then they will also top up with importation products. So there's a 12-month supply of lemon or orange or whatever else. So they just understand their gaps and fill them with the required product. So yeah, it's a global network of moving hundreds of thousands of kilos of fresh fruit and veg, daily, weekly. It's happening all the time. It's 24/7. The product is dictated and controlled by the weather. So it's probably the most volatile production stage. It's not in a controlled environment at all, really. There are some, indoor growing and stuff like that helps, but in the main, it's pretty much left up to the elements, which is why it's such an amazing industry and an amazing product. It can change in a matter of days. Product supply can be numerous or not at all, and that can go for demand as well. So it's just about gauging those things.
And how do you manage? So this is a very interesting way to see, like, how does it actually work? What happens if, let's say, you have a farm, I don't know, in South America of bananas or oranges, any kind of like fruit that you would get from South America. What happens if there's like a climate event and suddenly 80% of that crop is gone? How does that then impact upstream of the supply chain or downstream of the supply chain? How does that impact, the fried ships too? Because this is all on fried ships, right? So it's all massive ships. It's all massive ships that deliver this stuff. How do you manage this? Do you manage the adaptation? Like if there's a situation like this, what happens?
Yeah, I mean, to give you, like live examples, my import company, WT Hill, that concentrates on soft fruit. So you have to be very reactive in that process. So soft fruit is grown on a herbaceous plant. If there's a severe climatical change and, something really bad happens and the volumes just aren't there, you will obviously look around geographically for what else can replace that. So in the Spanish season, later on, you may be able to find some Portuguese fruit, or you may be able to find some Polish fruit if the demand will suffice with the price point that these people are going to need. So programs are programs, they're one thing, but you really have to understand the relationship towards fresh produce. If the product is just not there, it is just not there. And I think for me, the education has to go down to the consumer for this a little more. Like, I don't believe that your fruit bowl should look the same 12 months of the year. I don't think that your fridge, your fruit and veg drawer and your salad drawer should look the same 12 months of the year. I believe there should be some more seasonality in the way that we're eating and the way that we're understanding that, yes, this is a living product. It is that's something that's been grown, loved, picked and packed for us to consume. And in that process, things do go wrong. So if there aren't blueberries or there isn't citrus or bananas on the shelves 12 months of the year, there's probably a good reason behind that. And I think if we can not just manage expectation, but also manage information better, then I think the consumers are going to have a high tolerance to, do you know what? Like, there was an avalanche or like there was a rock slide on this, whatever, the farms just can't operate. Then, fair enough. Like that's what it is. But I think our consumer world and the way that we try and manage the supply chain is that we must have product. You almost sort of, you make a panicked decision a lot of the time. Bad business is done that way. Wastage comes that way, where you've got a product just to fill a gap and it's just not fit for purpose, but it's ticked the box. And sometimes I believe that's the mismanagement because of the misinformation that we've got in our industry.
Question on that, and maybe a silly question, right? So how is it, right? Let's say there's many fruits that are seasonal, right? How is it that we manage to have, as far as I'm aware, and again, I think this could be a silly question, how can we manage to have all kinds of fruits available all around the year in the developed world? And do we? And enlighten me on this. And how? If we do, how?
I think we do. There isn't much fruit really you can't get hold of, like within reason, 12 months of the year. How do we get it? We come from so many different sources. In a developed world, we'll take Spain for an example. You can have product 12 months of the year because of your own national production, because of the appetite to import to that country as well. It's got a big population, very secure, a secure economic structure. The population do consume a lot of fresh produce traditionally and going forward. So there's a business opportunity there, right? So bananas is a great example. That is just a 12-month of the year product. Other products that are following that, avocados, blueberries, these are like those superfoods that are just really there 12 months of the year. And it's because of the amount of, the numerous sources that we have to extrapolate that product, but also the fantastic growing techniques that these sources have in order to stage harvesting, stage ripening, concentrate on some varietal changes, how the product should be transported, how it should be stored. So that's pretty much how we have a 12-month of the year production. Things that are slightly more volatile, like berries, for an example, that can be tricky for a 12-month supply of good quality product wherever you are in the globe. That's more of a seasonal product. And we've got numerous sources for that. It's just the perishability of the product itself that makes it a little tricky. But yeah, to answer your question, if it's a fairly hardy, well researched and well documented product, you've got a good opportunity to supply globally 12 months really.
And using growing tactics, right? So basically you get around the seasonality of a fruit by growing tactics. So you figure out how to grow it in a way where it can kind of like become independent of the climate. Is that right? So how does that work?
Again, being independent of the climate, you take advantage of the climates that you're in, obviously, for things like banana production. We'll use the UK as an example for some of our own production. We produce very, very high quality strawberries. Most of the strawberries, as a percentile, be very high percentage of strawberries are actually grown on hydroponic tabletops. They're not actually grown in the ground itself. It's hydroponic tabletop, which has fantastic mulch. It's reusable. You can use that mulch back into the ground. It's a lot easier for production. The fruit is growing at around waist height, so picking is so much easier than obviously bending down and cutting it. You've got a lot of airflow through the bottom of the fruit, through the bottom of the plant. It's a fantastic way of growing fruit. But we're taking advantage of that technique to give us polytunneled fruit. So polytunnels are those plastic tunnels that sort of create a warmer environment and protect from the rain. Your production is really affected more by light levels than anything else. And that's your sort of, I suppose, as far as growing techniques go, understanding your environment, understanding what protection procedures you need. Do you need polytunnels? Do you need some airflow going through there? Do you need all of these sorts of things? There's a lot going on at the moment, and exciting spaces like vertical farming, farming underground using UV lights, stuff like that to grow salads. It's exciting because those are fully controlled. They're not at huge scale, but it's exciting to see these sorts of projects as well. But to answer your question, yes, it's farming techniques. It's how well you farm and how well you use the natural resources that you've got, and how well you use your geographical location in your product selection, as in what you grow. And that's the trick to it, really. And
what do you think, from your knowledge, a pretty extensive knowledge of the system, what do you think are its main, let's say, deficiencies or problems, and what kind of impact do they have on our life, and what kind of impact they could have in the future, if things get worse from a climate sense, war sense, etc.?
Yeah. Well, it's extremely impactful, our industry. What I'd like to see, you want to know that the land that you're using is being used to its fullest potential, its optimal potential. So devastating to see when a crop is perfectly fine. It's being grown for a program, or it's being grown for a purpose, but the program or purpose, whether it be political or like we were just talking about the war, if there is a marketplace that's then disappeared and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of tons of product that was destined for that marketplace is now no longer there or no longer requires it, what happens to that product? Well, a lot of times goes to the bin. But actually, there are so many more opportunities out there to redistribute that product, not just to, redistribute and not see it again, but redistribute it and sell, introduce products that people weren't aware of previously, to, making your diet a little bit more broad, making it more seasonal. So that's our opportunities there, and we miss them a lot. And then I think the very reason why is because as an industry, we're fantastic at moving product, but we're very, very inefficient at moving information, and that's our problem. We miss those opportunities because no one knows. You're like, oh, I don't know someone in there, so how do I find out? How would I know where to go and even start to look for that? And that's just not available at the moment. And obviously, my own project is I've been seeing that time and time again. My own project is to say, right, if you're looking for someone, let's just say if you're looking for someone, we'll take Ukraine as an example, awful circumstances that are over there, their marketplace absolutely devastated, and with Russia as well, market opportunities there are dwindling. Massive amounts of volume goes there from numerous sources all over the world, fresh produce. Now, where do you redivert that to? Do you go to Holland? Do you go to Poland? Do you go Southern Europe? Are you looking more towards Western Europe? What's your gut? What's your aim? How do you do that? How do you position yourself? And how do you know who to speak to and offer this product to? And how do you know how to get it there? Those infrastructures are actually there because, as I say, we can move product really, really well as an industry. It's just the moving of information that we find difficult. So that's one inefficiency. And I think that leads back to then, land usage not being optimized, huge amounts of water being wasted on irrigating the product. The impact, quite simply, is not sustainable. If we don't figure out a way to make sure that more product is entering the food chain, it's not a sustainable model. Too much food is wasted for lack of a better word, not actually knowing what to do with it, not having the information and the knowledge to be able to redistribute that. So I think that's probably our biggest fear at the moment, is that if we continue down a path where we continue production and continue to mass produce product, and we're relying on, well, I'm just going to grow it, and once I shut the farm gate, that's the end of its journey. That's actually not true. We do need to make sure that the full supply chain is understood, and that everybody is held accountable, and everybody is participating in making sure that as much fresh produce as possible, humanly possible, enters the food chain and doesn't go to waste. That's got to be our drive. And yeah, I mean that's global. It's a global issue. Population is growing globally. We must feed them. So we're growing product, fantastic product. We need to grow better. We need to adopt technology in order to make us more efficient in that, efficient in market choices, in what product you're growing for and why, what the destination is, understanding the landscape quite literally of what that looks like for you as a producer, and then also as a marketeer. Like, what does the marketplace look like? How, if that marketplace disappears, do you react? What's your plan B, C, and D? I think is key for that.
So basically what you're saying, right, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that up to now, like throughout human history, we've been basically running these massive food supply chains, right? And we were kind of very confident that, like, it will always be fine, right? And when a big emergency or situation happens, rather than having the information and the readiness to deal with it, which we actually would be able to deal with it, because we don't have enough information about how the entire supply chain and the entire like movement of fruits and vegetables around the planet from the growing place to the consumer, because we don't have enough information and enough communication between it, we are not ready for major global crises when it comes to food. Is that basically
in a nutshell? Absolutely. And the keyword communication. Keyword is that communicating, understanding who you're dealing with. You know, there are very, very good, reliable sources out there, and having that information to communicate and solve a lot of these problems quite quickly is going to make a massive impact. I'm sure of it.
Wow. So William, so you're saying, right, with FruPro, you're going after this problem. So first of all, before we dive into FruPro, let me tell you, there's a lot on your back. Whoever thinks about this whole situation, spend some time to think about what we're talking about, right? Because this has such deep implications, right? On especially the poorest people around the world, especially those people. Like you probably heard that there's a very high likelihood of a food crisis in North Africa because of the Ukraine-Russia war, right? And this is from what you're saying, and we have a food waste problem and a food poverty problem at the same time. So it's obvious, like you must be right that like if you could just figure out a way to move that food more efficiently from one way to the other, you could potentially solve world hunger. So, okay, do you think FruPro, in the best case scenario, and this is a kind of crazy question, however long it takes, could solve world hunger? Do you think that's possible?
I absolutely 100% believe, without any doubt in my mind, that FruPro will enhance every relationship to fresh produce. That's what I'm going out to do. So world hunger being solved, I would I say that as a statement? I don't know is the statement for that. But what I do know and 100% believe in that it enhances every relationship to fresh produce. And that for me is always, there's three pillars there. The environmental relationship. So it makes a better environmental relationship because there's more information, there's more ways out there, you're getting more product into the food chain. Economic, so we're seeing new market emerging, we're seeing marketplaces, take Africa for an example, that have exciting opportunities that should be taken into consideration when growing. And I think social, that's our last pillar. So the social responsibility that we have as an industry is to make sure as many people as possible are eating fruit and vegetables, regardless of price point, regardless of where you are in the world. If at source you're understanding that this conflict is causing major disruption in our normal marketplaces, we couldn't possibly put product there. However, there is a major crisis brewing in North Africa. We need to get fruit down to Morocco. I mean, we get so much product from there. There's surely got to be someone there who's got an answer to our logistical challenges to getting product across that continent. That's the top part of that continent. How it's just that moving of information. I fully believe that FruPro will solve those issues by just connecting people in the right way, understanding the nuances of the industry, but also being able to make those informed decisions. No point sending 4-week-old blueberries that are going to take another week to get to the northern African marketplaces. That's just a ridiculous thing to do. But if you've got something long life and it's already been harvested, onions, potatoes, carrots, whatever, you haven't got the marketplace over there for them. We've got data that tells us if we store these, we've got 3 months. If we store these correctly, you can take them down. You can you can enter into these marketplaces. Yes, okay, the price point may be different, but surely that's better than disposing, increasing our carbon footprint by, producing so much product that we are going to landfill with it that we don't know what to, we're just, mulching it back into the earth, which effectively only takes us so far. And there's so many opportunities there. So for me, the big global statement is that FruPro will enhance every relationship to fresh produce. That's what I'm setting out to do.
How does FruPro work? Can you explain to the audience basically? Like
Yeah.
we've been kind of mentioning the name and like mentioning the
Yeah.
problem it's gonna solve, but we never would dive into like, okay, how does it actually work?
So it's basically a network, and it's all B2B. So it's business to business. It's not for consumer just yet. So
Mm-hmm.
the supply chain has a number of different businesses on it. So we'll start from the top. A grower. If you're a grower, you can be on FruPro. You can have a profile. We will have a profile. You'd have a profile. You'd be able to list what you grow, details of the varieties, details of your harvest time, production time, what formats you'd like to pack in, how accessible you are, and where you are geographically. So that's you. You're a beacon of light. You've got a product that the world needs. There's importers and exporters on the platform as well. Same thing. They've got profiles. They've got company histories. They've got what they import, what marketplaces they go to, how they would like to see the product packed, what due diligence they need in order to get that product onto the shelves or into the wholesale markets. Then we go to wholesale. So that's probably the next stage after import in the non-supermarket world. Wholesale then are there, they've got profiles, and wholesalers are looking at how many more suppliers can I get that are useful, but also how many more customers, my supplier and buyer list, how do I make that more expansive, more enriched? FruPro does that. It sort of takes what you've got already, which is very, very traditionally ran, huge amounts of communication through like things like WhatsApp, text, phone, fax, even, so many different mediums for communication. Nothing is consolidated and is actually active for live trading. And FruPro just lets you demonstrate, okay, I'm a wholesaler. You yourself live in Barcelona, one of the best wholesale markets I've ever been to. And I've been to most in Europe. Mercabana, it's got an array of product that is just out of this world. The atmosphere in there is fantastic. Like I say, the product lines are just, unbelievably good. And more people should know about that. You don't have to just go to who are they supplying. So we go to the end of the chain where we have the retailers who are supplying the consumers. We have restaurants, we have food service. They've also got a profile. So it's linking these people together, understanding how they can scale their businesses, how they can operate in a more efficient way, how they can benefit from understanding what marketplaces are doing. And like I was saying before, it then helps us move information instant, that instant information moving up and down the supply chain. That's going to create a lot more. We're going to see so much more efficiency in the entire supply chain, and that will impact us environmentally, economically, and socially in a positive way. And that's the goal for it.
So tell me, you told us, how it's going to work with FruPro. How does it work today before FruPro? How do all these various players in our literally supply of food, this is such a big deal, the supply of how we eat, right? Which is why we survive, why there's no Hunger Games, out here in Barcelona and in England, like this is the reason why we don't have Hunger Games. It's because we have all of these players, all these growers, distributors, wholesalers, all of them dealing with food. Without FruPro, how is it done? If I own a supermarket and I need to get like tomatoes from Argentina, I don't know if tomatoes grow in Argentina, but a random example. Well, how do I go about that? How does it work?
Your first step, really, look through your network, your own individual one. Networks are very much siloed. Information is kept quite close to chest. If you know someone, ring around, Google it.
So no system. No technological, just literally like anything.
Anything you can think of. I mean, I myself, as a young importer, trying to find product from Peru, even, and South America is a fantastic source of fresh produce. But you go and speak to the chambers of commerce and say, look, do you know any growers of this, please? Because I'd like to bring it to the UK. Yeah, sure. And then they'll introduce you, and then you've got to talk to them. Do they speak Spanish? Do they speak Portuguese? What's the requirements for them what KYC do they want? So they want to know me as their customer. I need to know them as a business. So what KYB do I have on them? Do I know if I send these guys money, are they going to send me my product?
Mm-hmm.
And now still to this day, that's still pretty much the process. If you're looking for a new supplier of anything, you can attend fruit fairs, things like Fruit Logistica in Berlin, Fruit Attraction in Madrid. They're fantastic fairs in the European marketplaces. They are very global as well. But you go there, you walk past something, you might be lucky enough to see something you like and need as a buyer, speak to the right person, and then you get the product. But all of the scenarios need to fit perfectly for you to probably start commencing trade, let alone develop that into a good working relationship. So it's very, very traditional. I love the fact that it's relationship based. However, that's not really scalable if you're thinking about how do I, like you say, if you were just to start up now, okay, I want to be involved with fresh produce. What should I grow where I am? I'm going to grow tomatoes in Spain. Who are you going to sell them to? How are you going to go through that process? Who do you know to be like, oh, where do I go with these then? Do I just take them to the supermarket front door and drop them off there? What's the process?
Mm-hmm.
How does it work? And you really have to be so ingrained with the industry and know a lot of people to be able to have that knowledge. And that's just, again, inefficient and not really scalable. So we're now looking at FruPro being like, actually, these are the steps, these are the players, these are the people you can speak to. These are, if you're looking for something in a certain country, just search. It may not exist. Might not exist for your marketplace. It might be like, no, that's going to cost, the average price of tomatoes is, €3 a kilo. To get tomatoes from Argentina to Spain is going to cost you €7 a kilo. It's just an inefficient model. You can do it if you want, if you want to lose money, but who wants to do that? And that's kind of where we're stepping into right now. That world of we can make informed decisions and actually get the answers we're looking for.
Going back to what I said earlier, like when you're saying this, it makes me feel a little bit scared and a little bit insecure about generally like as a human being that needs food to survive. Like if you have a situation where some important grower or some important distributor, for some wild reason, there could be many, it could be a natural disaster, it could be like what we have right now, and this is literally happening right now with the war. It could be like just like severe climate change, could be like a civil conflict, because we don't have the infrastructure, which is what you're building, right, for someone to replace, right, like the whoever it is in the supply chain that they work with to get the fruit and veg from the farm to the shop or to the plate, because there's no efficient system. Like it's as efficient as someone is good at going on Google, finding a bunch load of like suppliers, calling them all up and not knowing if they're even going to get it because they don't know who it is. So so our system is like this, like we're feeding what's like 8 billion people. Like this is like we're feeding 8 billion people, and we have a system that is like one little thing goes wrong, right? And that might lead to hunger and starvation for how many, like millions, hundreds of millions? We don't know, because we don't even track this. We don't even track this. Like no one's tracking this.
Yeah,
we're not tracking anything. We're not tracking anything.
I mean, I think, as like you say, just thinking about the players in the industry as well, it's quite, if you, for whatever reason, if one food source gets cut off, where does the replacement come from? How do we efficiently do that? And how do we effectively do that? How do we educate consumers in that, actually this product line that we used to have, that's no longer an option for you guys. Your dietary requirements don't necessarily have to have this. This is what your substitutes are, and this is the reason why. I think that's our most sustainable model, in that, we're going to potentially not, if we look at it a different way, but if we're not going hungry, we're just going to have to be adaptable. So if there is a lack of blueberries, avocados, or bananas, that's just not going to be on your porridge if it's blueberries and bananas, and you're not going to have avocado on toast. That's just what's going to happen. You need to be aware of the fact that you're going to have this when it's seasonally available to you. And that's I do believe there'll be a high tolerance for the consumer, because you yourself, everybody, any sane person in the world anyway, is obviously worried and concerned about the sustainability and the impact we have on the world. And what we need to do as responsible humans is to be like, right, okay, what can we do to optimize our own little section of the world? My section of the world is all fruit and veg. I love the product, I love the industry, but how do we make it better? Like how does that become an actual industry that's, something where we can say, answer your question. If you were to say, what would happen if like the biggest strawberry supplier in southern Spain just left? What would we do in Spain? How would we get our strawberries? Well, the reality is you'd get a certain amount from Portugal, certain amount from maybe France, but their national market will take it up. But reality is that strawberries would just be less, and you would eat more raspberries and blueberries, for an example. That's that information pass, right? That's sort of like, this is what's going to happen, and this is how we're going to deal with it. And I think that's how we progress as an industry, and we can start to see pockets of opportunity to open up new product. Even, I love to see new fruits being designed and coming into the marketplaces, but it takes so long for that to happen. But actually, it can happen quite quickly if we just allowed it. If we allowed that information to be like, got a new product, I think everyone would like it. Let's try it. Boom, and it's it, and it hits the shelves and it hits the consumer. Then all of a sudden, the consumer, because the consumer drives everything, right?
Yeah,
the consumer drives the whole supply chain. So, yeah, I think that's exciting also. But I'll give you an example for FruPro. First lockdown 2020, March, the UK. Reynolds Catering, probably one of the biggest caterers in the UK. Really, really good business. We've worked with them in the past via WTO Imports. I just founded FruPro and lockdown hit. So hospitality and leisure's gone. That's finished, right? It's all shut. But Reynolds have still got product in their warehouses and product arriving because it's programmed. And they had around 180,000 kilos of fresh fruit and veg, class one, very, very good quality, that they didn't know what to do with. No idea. Now, they're based in the UK, which is one of the most densely populated countries in Europe, or in the world even.
In the world, yeah.
We've got fantastic networks of logistics. We've got a company that's really, really well placed, very, very well secured in its own marketplace, still doesn't know what to do. And this is that cataclysmic. Their program's just left. Obviously, it's extreme. They're like, I get a phone call because I know them. What do I do with this? 10 lorries. You're talking, what was it? It was something like 10 lorries, 251 pallets of product. And so I said, look, I'm actually doing a project right now called FruPro. This is perfect. I don't want any money for it, but let me just do this. Created a simple type form. I broadcasted it to my wholesale network, which is UK wide. And it was very much easy selection process. I want. We calibrated all of that together, redistributed it using third-party transport, which is obviously paid for by the resale of the product. 100% of that product was resold back onto the wholesale environment. So that meant that 180,000 kilos in 48 hours was picked up from a place that didn't know what to do with it, dropped to a place that needed it, and was resold or distributed back into the food chain. And that one simple exercise from something with low tech and unscalable, that saved, as I said, 180,000 kilos of product going in the bin, and would have fed 500,000 people their 5 a day over that weekend. Now, that's an extreme circumstance, and it's one of the most proudest moments for me without a product, and I did that on my own. What we can do with something that is scalable and has a strong technological base, I believe that we can surpass that so many times over, and hear of these stories and hear of these, macroeconomic influences that happen, and we react to them positively. I think that's our key.
So to finish up the podcast, and it was really absolute pleasure. I've learned a lot, and I think we should do another one in the future. There's so many things we could dive into more detail. But I want to finish it up with a really big question, actually a takeaway from this podcast, and you tell me if you approve or if I'm correct. So Do you believe that the solution to world hunger is not more money, but better communication? Do you believe this?
100%. I think so. I truly believe
Holy
that.
shit. Holy
I
shit.
believe that.
I mean,
I
this is a
believe
big deal.
I believe better communication and I believe better process actually solves more quickly and longer term. We need, don't get me wrong, I'm not being vanilla in my answer here. You know, investment is needed from government to government, of course. We need to support people who have zero. Like we need to support those people and help where we can. We can only do that with absolutely streamlined, optimal processes because what we're growing and what we're trying to deliver to these people across the world is perishable. We have to do it in the right way, and that's the key to it. It's information and process.
So I tell you what, William, I'm a massive believer. I'm a big believer,
Thank you.
and really best of luck. I really hope FruPro succeeds. I mean, for
Thank you,
me,
mate.
it's one of the big things. Like people
Thank you.
starving in the world when we have a big obesity, it's a clear indication that we're doing something wrong. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much for solving it, and it's been a pleasure to have you here. And we'll talk again really soon. Thank you
Philip,
so much,
thanks so
William.
much. Have a lovely weekend, mate. Take care of yourself.
All right, you too. Ciao, ciao.
Bye. Bye.